welcome to episode number 77 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, and iHeartRadio. My name is Jason Finelli, and I am the esports and gaming insider for Fox PHL The Gambler, and we have a spectacular episode for you this evening. Two great interviews coming your way in the next hour. First off, we're going to talk about more about the Hard Rock Hotel esports event that I mentioned at the end of last week's show. Got the the VP of Business Development for LANDuel to come and check out, come hang out on the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast. Talk to me about that. His name is Murphy Vandervelde. That's a great talk. Also, Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon, another big hit for Yacht Club Games, and their marketing manager, Celia Schilling, has come along to talk about that, to talk about other games that are coming for Shovel Knight Dig, and to talk about some potentially interesting things in the world of Shovel Knight. But before we do any of that, let's get right down into the 6 in 60 seconds. Valorant crowns its first ever champion, Team Ascend from Europe, who defeated Gambit Esports in the grand finals this past Sunday. Oxygen Esports announces a partnership with the Overwatch League's Boston Uprising for the creation of a Boston-based Call of Duty League franchise. Speaking of, the Call of Duty League announces its new league structure for the 2022 season, including playoff structure changes and a return to live events during the majors. Nintendo's Indie World presentation on December 15th confirmed Sea of Stars from Sabotage, Chicory, A Colorful Tale from Finji, and more coming to Nintendo Switch. Elsewhere, Final Fantasy XIV's Endwalker expansion is so popular, Square Enix is forced to stop selling it temporarily to fix the online connection congestion issues. And finally, Bungie's head of human resources has stepped down following a report of a toxic workplace culture at the studio. Those are your 6 in 60 seconds. And as always, the 6 in 60 seconds are brought to you tonight by our sponsor here at Cheesesteaks and Controllers, Ghost Shaver. The Ghost Shaver is designed to feel like an extension of your arm, allowing any user to reach anywhere on the head, face, or body. Its precision cutting system gives you a close and smooth shave every single time, thanks to 5 different rotary flex action super thin blades and a patented handle design that fits into the palm of your hand precisely. Go to ghostshaver.com to check things out and get yours. That's Ghost Shaver, a shave above the rest. Yes, folks, those were your 6 in 60 seconds for the week. Nintendo surprising us with an Indie World announcement and presentation just before the end of the year, and a lot of people watched League of Legends Worlds 2021, which should surprise absolutely no one. Speaking of surprises, one hit the Cheesesteaks and Controllers news desk on Friday as we were recording our Friday Game Awards wrap-up. The Hard Rock Hotel down in Atlantic City, the casino that used to host a show that we used to have there in our first year, is now partnering with Esports Entertainment Group to bring in a live esports event, Madden 22 tournament, that will allow the players to bet on themselves throughout the tournament. I talked about this at the end of my show on Friday, had a couple of concerns with things that might be possible that wouldn't be very great, and they were quick to contact me and say, hey, let's get this all fixed, let's get this all figured out, let's give you someone to talk to that can set you straight. And I absolutely love being set straight. So we have now the VP of Business Development and LANDuel, which is a great name, for Esports Entertainment Group, Murphy Vandervelde, here to talk to us about this event. Murphy, how are we today?
Jason, I'm great. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Happy to have you here. But first, before we get into the actual event, let's talk a little bit about Esports Entertainment Group first. I understand that it is obviously a group of esports focused companies that have come together to produce events like this. So explain to folks listening who might not be familiar with the company what you guys are all about.
Yeah, so we are a full-stack esports and wagering company. The way the company is currently set up is there's 2 subsidiaries. There's the traditional gambling and iGaming side that goes under Esports Entertainment Group, and then there's Esports Entertainment Group Games, or EEG Games, which is the culmination of two acquisitions. The first was Esports Gaming League, or EGL. They are an agency and production company. And then the second one, is which what brought me and my team along, was the acquisition of GG Circuit, Genji Data, and Helix Esports. And so we are part of EEG Games, and LANDuel is this awesome project that we're working on right now that spans both the traditional iGaming and wagering side as well as the EEG Games side.
Cool. So let's get into now this Hard Rock event. How did this deal first surface? So negotiations, I assume, began a while ago. I don't think it's something that happened overnight. But was Hard Rock looking for an esports event themselves? Were they trying to get in on the action? Or was this something you had brought to them? And furthermore, where did the New Jersey ruling fall into all of this?
It's a great question. So I think there's no secret that casino operators are looking for a way to revitalize their core customer, and esports is top of mind for them currently right now. With that said, this came out of a mutual connection. So we have one of our esports entertainment facilities up in North Bergen, New Jersey, and we hosted some of the visionaries from Hard Rock as well as some of the leadership from the New Jersey Department of Gaming Enforcement, or DGE, as you'll hear me refer to them from now on. And this event and partnership was the culmination of a brainstorm session inside Helix about 2.5 years ago. We've since kind of gone through a restructuring and an acquisition, but this was born out of a conversation at Helix. But the one big thing that we were challenged to as a smaller company was we need to pass the regulatory requirements of both a casino operator at Hard Rock and the New Jersey DGE. And so it was a huge boon for us to be acquired by Esports Entertainment Group, because they have a ton of experience navigating all the litigious processes and regulatory compliance issues. So this has been a long time coming, but we're super excited about the partnership.
So would you say that when you're going through this process, the state is more stringent in its regulation, or the hotel and everything it needs to protect is more stringent, or do they kind of balance each other out?
They kind of balance each other out, and they play off of each other. This has been a pretty symbiotic relationship between the DGE and traditional casino operators for a long time. They both have a lot at risk, which is why they need any new operators coming into the space to be vetted and kind of above board. So there's certain pieces about the technology that the DGE was more strict about, and there were certain pieces about the event and how it was going to be held inside of a licensed property that Hard Rock focused in on. But at the end of the day, it was a pretty standardized requirement across the board, which was good for us because it allowed us to kind of accelerate the process. But at the same time, they're both extremely transparent and have been great partners throughout the process.
Cool. So let's get into now how this program works. Let's get into the in-game wagering. So you're saying that players will be able to wager on themselves during the tournament. I have heard of apps that do this before, but not so much in a scale like this. So walk me through the process on how they'll be able to do that and what this tournament will then entail.
Yeah, so LANDuel was born out of the idea that there is a safer and more enjoyable way for players to engage in peer-to-peer wagering. As you mentioned, there's a ton of online sites that operate in the Wild West type mentality. They don't engage regulators. They don't engage casino operators. So the required tax and license revenue that should be attributed to these bodies isn't given. And so it's kind of a fractured market right now where they all operate in a gray area. We re-envision this in a different way. We know that casino operators need to be driving younger customers into their casinos, and we knew that the DGE wants to be able to regulate and recognize peer-to-peer wagering. And so the idea was we built the LANDuel software to facilitate in-person events where we have very strict know your customer, KYC protocols, to ensure that the people that are playing are who they say they are, and that they're not misrepresenting their skill to be able to pool shark or sandbag their way to a significant profit. With that said, the way that the event will work is very similar to a DraftKings head-to-head matchup, where there will be each opponent will be wagering on themselves in the outcome of their match. They will bet equal amounts. So let's call you and I are playing. It will put in $25, you'll put in $25, and then it's a total of a $50 pot. LANDuel and the casino partner will take 10%, and the winner will take the rest. So why is this important? This makes match fixing, to your point, a losing endeavor, because both parties on either side only get 90% of the pot, so they can keep putting money in, and they're only going to get 90% of it out. So it's not a winning endeavor, and so that's kind of the mechanics and the economics behind making sure that people are incentivized to cheat, but we also have robust analytics, anomaly detection, machine vision, computer vision, and manual overrides to ensure that people aren't trying to circumvent the good nature and true integrity protocols of the system.
It almost sounds like when you explain it like that, I'm getting a vision in my head, and you can tell me if this is off track, of like a World Series of poker or a poker event where you put in an amount of money that gets you your chips, but then you can then keep playing and keep betting and eventually win a big pot, because there is a pot at the end of this. The only major difference is your players are winning a little bit every round head to head, and if they win the tournament, they get part of the big pot too, right? They're separate.
It's, completely separate. So it's going to run like a traditional tournament, and you'll be able to wager on the outcomes of your individual matches. But your analogy is very correct, and that's one of the kind of the fundamental basis points of our application to the DGE is that it functions very similar to a poker tournament. So you're spot on.
Okay, so last week I had expressed concerns about potential, match fixing and things like that. When I hear players can bet on themselves, my old-fashioned sports bells start ringing, and I think about a guy like Pete Rose, especially here in Philadelphia, and others of that ilk. I imagine that this concern is born from ignorance of the platform. So how do you avoid people trying to do or attempt something like this? What are your background security measures, as it were?
Well, it's a great question. So first of all, the only people that are able to wager on the outcome of a match are the two participants.
Okay.
So there's no outside wagers. So my friend or my girlfriend couldn't bet on me if I'm playing in a match. It's simply mano-y-mano, and the house takes a percent of the winnings. So ultimately, again, back to the point of the economics don't work for long-term success there. Secondarily, for the first event, while we're trying to gather data points, we're going to cap the wagers to increments of 25 all the way up to 50. So realistically, you're not going to have people putting down $1 million bets on these games to start. You're going to have to play and verify your identity, and our system stores not just match outcomes, but in-game performance to inform your true skill level, and will continuously update your profile within LANDuel to ensure that you're being matched with players of like skill, but you will unlock the ability to bet more as you play more, so that we know we more reliably can place you with players of like skill. So you're not going to have people coming in for their first match being able to wager $100 or $1 million. You'll have to earn that right by playing and adhering to the rules and adhering to all the rest of the protocols we put into place. And so we believe that we've built a pretty bulletproof system to ensure that at this first event and beyond there won't be any integrity issues or pool sharks.
Interesting. So what you're saying is you've essentially made your own matchmaking. Like when someone wants to get online and play Halo, they get matched with people of like skill. Only in this case, that skill level also informs how much you're allowed to bet on yourself in any given match. Huh.
Yeah, so I think back to the point of the acquisition, when I mentioned one of the groups that we came in with is a group called Genji Analytics. They've now rebranded as EEG Labs. They are one of the leading data and analytics companies in esports that provide information to publishers for their drafts, and so they do a ton of match predictions, player rankings, skill analysis, and so they're some of the smartest minds in the business. So that's we have a huge data and analytics practice underneath the LANDuel software. That's
amazing. And so right now, I know that EEG has worked with primarily in esports, which is a weird thing to say. But like, for example, this is a Madden tournament. EEG, I believe, was the company that ran the Subaru Park Showdown with the Philadelphia Union that I attended with my program director, Sean Brace, over the summer. Do you focus on other games as well? Like, how far could this LANDuel go? Say if I was entering a fighting game tournament, or if you guys held a fighting game tournament, could we do this in something like that where it'll analyze my skill level as I'm playing and then eventually match me with players of like skill? Because honestly, I would need that. As much as I love playing fighting games, I'm not very good at them, and I don't want to lose money if I can help it. So if I could stay with people with my skill level, I would appreciate that. Is that something you have thought of before?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you look at the strategy of EEG all up, so EEG Games, the entire company, there's a huge focus on understanding there's a big overlap between sports fans and esports participants and trying to meld the two. So that's why we've started with sports games. With that said, the models that we've built simply would need to be trained to analyze and understand what are those golden variables for fighting games, for shooters, and it can be easily retooled. We've just had a concerted focus to get this event approved through the DGE, which is why we focused on the title that we have.
Sure.
This could be applied across the board, and we're actually looking for the future of the product to take this to multiplayer, so you could have multiple people that have head-to-head. It's not all that much more difficult to understand duos or teams of 5. And then secondarily, where we want to get to in the future is creating a handicap system for esports, very similar to golf. So instead of being matched just directly to a player of like skill, let's say you are significantly better than me, but we're friends, we go to the casino together, and we want to be able to directly match against each other. The analytics would actually be able to spit out a spread. And the beautiful thing about esports and not traditional sports is no matter how high level the competition is in esports, the binary, the code that comes out of the game is the exact same.
True.
Whereas if you look at MLB and a beer league softball, you're not getting that same level of statistical analysis. You're not getting the same reliability of statistics. But there's no difference between whether Ninja's playing a game or whether it's me and you playing a game. The outcome is the exact same in the code, which allows us to ingest a much larger data set with a high degree of confidence and reliably predict the outcome or the spread of a game.
Okay. Yeah, I can see where that's coming in. That's awesome. So a golf handicap is not something I would ever think to associate with esports, but the way you're explaining it here, it does make sense that you could do that. You could even like that data could then be applied to, because I remember I asked you before, or I asked about, I mentioned before to Sean Brace, this isn't something where I can go in and just put $50 down on the Atlanta FaZe. This is something where, the people are just betting against themselves. But eventually that data could then be extrapolated to something like that if you're creating spreads, if you're creating handicaps and stuff like that. Interesting stuff.
I also think there's a much wider, and coming from a tournament organizer and esports center background, the concept of having a handicap is super interesting, because if you think about the way that, if you just look at a traditional golf country club, all across the country, there's net and gross tournaments. And the biggest problem with esports right now, as I see it, especially for our amateur tournaments, is that the top 10% are always going to be the top 10%. So we end up churning out 30 to 40% of customers over the course of a tournament because they get frustrated that they're never actually going to be at the top, even if they play far above where they should. So if you think about the ability in a Fortnite lobby to be able to actually say, this kid, relative to his skill level, played far better than the person who actually is the better player, you can much more reliably retain customers for these amateur tournaments. So I think it goes just beyond the wagering component and providing almost like a gross and net capability inside of esports to create more engaging programming, which is going to drive up loyalty and customer retention.
That is fascinating. That sounds awesome. I had not realized the power of this when we first started talking, but now that you have mentioned that, I am now very much interested and invested to see where this goes. But I do want to go back to the Hard Rock event for one more question on that before we get done here. You did mention that fans will not be able to interact and bet on the matches. So will there be any spectator or fan activations or interactions during the tournament? What will folks who want to watch this be able to do other than just watch?
So the beautiful thing about this is we have the ability for players not playing the tournament that are of age to sit down at a bank and play casual matches.
Oh, cool.
And wager on them as well. So players that are outside of the tournament who just want to sit down and either directly match against a friend or match against a player of like skill will be able to do so outside the confines of the tournament as well. And we'll have a bank of PCs set aside for that. So you'll have your tournament participators playing and with the ability to wager, but spectators who want to sit down and enjoy the experience as well, who aren't playing in the tournament, can go play one-off casual matches with the exact same stakes as the players inside the tournament.
Oh, that's cool. So, and there will also be Madden as well?
Yes, it'll also be Madden.
Oh, cool. So, Sean Brace, if and when you're listening to this, if we go to this event, you and I are going to put $25 down on a Madden match. I hope you're ready. Because, Why not? But
To see the outcome of that.
yeah, me too. I'd like to see what the data extrapolates from my poor, haven't played Madden in 3 years performance. I'm all bluster, by the way. He would crush me. So this is awesome. Thank you so much for this information. I do think that I have been set straight, as was the goal here. I do understand now that the concerns that I had aren't necessarily in play here because the program that's being used simply doesn't allow them. So thank you, Murphy Vandervelde, for your time. Murphy Vandervelde, again, from EEG, the VP of Business Operations and of Business Development and LANDuel. I look forward to the event. I look forward to seeing what EEG does from here. And I look forward to the next time we talk to each other, because I imagine this won't be the last. Murphy, thank you for your time.
I appreciate the time and hope to see you down in Atlantic City in January.
All right, folks, yes, we are back here with cheesesteaks and controllers. A big thank you to Murphy Vandervelde from Esports Entertainment Group coming on to talk about the event coming to Hard Rock Hotel in the end of January. That is my birthday weekend. Maybe I'll plan a birthday trip to Atlantic City for some esports and other debauchery. We'll see about that. But let's move on to our next interview of the show. This one I'm very excited about because A, it's a returning guest. I love those. That means they trust me. B, it's about a game that has taken off, more so than even the studio themselves predicted. I love talking about those. And C, it's Shovel Knight. It's one of my favorite franchises. Was my game of the year in 2014. I love this franchise, and now I get to talk once again to Celia Schilling, the marketing manager of Yacht Club Games. We're going to talk about some Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon. Celia, how are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me back on.
Absolutely. As we said as we were preparing, this is our yearly chat. It was Cyber Shadow back in January. Now we're talking about this. Next year we're talking about whatever else Yacht Club has going on. You keep making the great games. I'm happy to bring you on to talk about them. So let's get into this Pocket Dungeon for a little bit. First things first, though. I, in our pre-show talk, had this confused with Shovel Knight Dig, and apparently I'm not the only one. So this is a different game from that. Yes, they are two separate projects.
Yep, they are. We announced them at the same time, so that might be where your confusion, I guess, begun. So for that Shovel Knight Dig, we're working that with Nitro, and we'll have more details about it in 2022, but it's a completely different story, different studio, and different type of gameplay. The game that released on the 13th, and the one we're talking about today, is Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon. That is a puzzle action adventure with a dungeon crawling twist that we developed alongside Vine. It combines everything that we love about falling block puzzles and mashes it together with a roguelike adventure.
That sounds like a lot of great things mixed into one. Now, as you mentioned before we started recording, there was some hesitation or nervousness within the studio that Shovel Knight was taking a different approach than it normally would, and that people might write it off or not give it the same focus as they did with the previous game. Was that a real concern going into this?
It was a concern. Okay, so for that, every studio would love to make $1 billion on a very, very popular type of genre. Like going in, we knew that puzzles sometimes can get a bad rap, but they don't deserve that. Puzzles are amazing. Roguelites are great. And at Yacht Club Games, we don't just want to make games that you love. We want to make games that make you love gaming. And that applies to all genres. So we put a whole lot of passion into this project, and maybe people who give it a chance might fall in love with a completely different genre than that they were used to.
You heard it here first. I love that, making games for people to fall in love with gaming, not necessarily like the games that people would expect you to make. That is an awesome message. Now, obviously it paid off because we're looking at 86 average on OpenCritic from 22 critics as we are talking right now. That's got to feel pretty good for everybody at the team, right? Big sigh of relief.
Yeah, everyone was so excited. Russell, who's Vine, he was ecstatic. Like the whole team is just so stoked and so pleased, and we're really happy that people opened their hearts up to this game because it is a heck ton of fun.
I'm wondering though where some of the inspiration from this actually came from. A lot of people are going to see match threes and they're going to think, "Oh, Candy Crush, mobile game, something like that." That might have gone into some of the nervousness that people might write it off. But I'm actually, in seeing this and playing this, getting more of a retro puzzle vibe, like a Dr. Mario or a Puzzle Quest, even for something a little more recently. That's more what the focus is here, right?
Yeah, so it was inspired of the game, like beloved the genre from the games of yesteryear. So yeah, the Wario Woodses, the Tetrises, like all those good games definitely inspired Russell and the team to really delve into this project. And then on the roguelike side of things, there's tons of different ones, like the Mystery Dungeons and even the more modern Spelunky. The team loves Spelunky. So it was cool to delve into both of them.
Spelunky is a fantastic game, and if you're going to use a game in the roguelike genre to be an inspiration, that would definitely be the one. So I completely understand that. Where did they think Shovel Knight fit into this? Was it basically just taking the world and putting a puzzle into it? Was there ever any consideration that maybe they might need to make a new, not a new IP, but like a new set of characters in the Shovel Knight universe or something like that? Or was it just like, this is going to fit, we will make it fit, it's going to work, we got this?
So to answer this question, I think I need to give you a little bit of the history of Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon. So initially, prior to Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon, this goes all the way back to when we first met Vine. So my colleague David was lurking Twitter, doing his thing, looking at cool games. And this person, Vine, I'm going to be referring to him as Vine and Russell. Let's just go with Russell. So Russell was posting GIFs and videos of his new game coming out called Puzzle Knights. And it was a roguelike puzzle action adventure game that we had never seen before. We're like, whoa, this is amazing. So David wanted to play that because he's a huge avid puzzle fan. He showed the team, and the team was like, wow, like this is amazing. And the crazy cool thing about it was, besides having knights in the title, there's a lot of similarities with Shovel Knight that like could build common ground. And we'd be like, wow, this is a universe that would really fit with the Shovel Knight universe. Let's reach out more than just fans and see if this guy wants to work with us. And we did. And Russell was like, oh, I was going to put this game out in like a week, but sure, let's see what's going on. And 3 years later, we released Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon.
Wow, his patience was absolutely rewarded there.
I know, right? It's another project where it almost took a decade to release, but he's definitely glad that he did. The game has definitely changed, even though the core substance of the game, the mechanics, still live on through Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon. But for other characters and building the world, that was definitely a challenge to figure out how the characters would translate into this style of game. And that's, I guess, where the creative genius goes for both teams. Everyone in this project was so passionate, so had their hands in it so much, where it actually was a pretty organic process of seeing how characters would act in the Pocket Dungeon and how we could make their personalities truly like expand and be vibrant. But as for new characters, there are a couple. So I know we had mentioned Shovel Knight Dig. So a character from there, Scrap Knight, is actually introduced also in Pocket Dungeon.
Oh,
so
cool.
she was collecting some cool things and got sucked in as well. So she's there. We also introduced Prism Knight, which is a brand new character, Puzzle Knight. There's a secret character which I can't mention, but keep your eyes out for, as well as 2 cameos from the original Puzzle Knight game. Tips and Key were the original protagonists, and they are puzzle dungeon experts that love learning about it and give you tips while in the campsite.
That actually answered my next question. I was wondering if any of the characters that Vine had created before this partnership had started made their way into the game, but you just said that. Of course they did, that's really cool. A lot of times you hear about a story like this, and the company that, quote, takes over the game kind of gets rid of those original assets in favor of their own. So the fact that they're even included is awesome to begin with. Was that always a consideration going into this, or Is that something that Vine had requested?
I don't think it was initially like a sense of like, okay, I'll work with you guys, but tip stays in.
Sure.
It was more of a sense of like we collaborated. Like it was such a mutually done project by the end of it that I'm not sure whose idea was what. There's tons of really fun things in the game that literally we've worked so like close on that I don't know who suggested it, but it was brilliant. So I think that's more the process. But we did keep a lot of aspects of Puzzle Nights as well. And I think that this is also considered Russell's child as well as ours because it was so collaborative.
Sure, that makes sense. And I can see where he has a sense of ownership, not only in the collaboration, but in the fact that this was his game and he was a week away from launch. And then all of a sudden, one of the biggest names in indie gaming is getting added to it at the last minute. It may have increased the development time for a couple of years, but I think in the end, it's definitely paid off. So let's talk a little bit, as much as you can at least, about Shovel Knight Dig. What kind of game is that, and how does it differ, just to further increase the separation so that my tired brain doesn't combine them again? What kind of game is Dig based on what's already been released?
So, it is more traditional in a sense of like where it's closer to platforming. It has procedurally generated levels, so no level is exactly the same.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. Oh my gosh, grabbing screenshots for that was such a schlep because I'd be like, oh, that was really cool. So I'd restart the level and I'd be like, oh no. Oh yeah, no, it looks so cool. But the same theming of the levels are the same. So like if you're going through, let's say, the Magic Landfill, there will be Magic Landfill elements, but the way you go through the level will always be different. You actually dig in this game. That's cool.
Oh.
Because you're digging down. So you're going after this character called Drill Knight. I'm not sure how much of the story we revealed in our original announcement, so I have to refresh on that. But yeah, there are brand new characters like Drill Knight and Spore Knight. We announced the evil forces that you're fighting, which are the Hexcavators. So there's a whole plot with that we'll get into. Drill Knight's the head of them. And yeah, I think that's about it. We're working with Nitro on it, and stay tuned for 2022 when I can talk more about it.
Let's book that interview now then, shall we?
Okay, next year. Let's do it. Same time, same
Did you say Hexcavators? Because that's excellent.
Hexcavators.
Wow, that's a great name.
Thank you.
So, are you then... Because a lot of people, obviously, Shovel Knight has had a lot of games come out, whether they were expansions to the original game, side games like Pocket Dungeon. He's appeared in different games like Blade Strangers and Super Smash Brothers, and Yooka-Laylee, which was one of my favorite of his cameos. The guy's been around, right? But a lot of fans might be wondering when, the true, quote-unquote, true sequel, if there is one, is coming. Could Dig be considered, maybe not a sequel, but like a 1.5 in terms of story?
So, fun fact, and I'll reveal it here for Dig.
Oh!
Dig and Pocket Dungeon are canon.
They are canon?
They are canon. We were writing the story, we wrote it in mind. So, yeah.
Interesting.
But I wouldn't consider either of them a sequel.
Okay.
And that's all I'll go into it. One day when we release the Shovel Knight Historia, I'll make the official timeline. But yeah.
Somebody call Dark Horse. Get Dark Horse on the phone. Start building that giant art book with the shovel on. I can see it now. The shovel on the front. Or you know what? No, I take it back. The campfire on the front. Like the hardcover, deluxe edition. Campfire on the cover. Oh, man. I can see that on my shelf right now. I got to stop. So this is awesome. Again, Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon has taken a lot of people, maybe not by surprise, but definitely by storm. That 86, well earned by you over at Yacht Club. Looking forward to Dig, looking forward to whatever's next for Shovel Knight after that, this Historia art book that we have now pitched, hopefully sometime in the future. Is there anything else that Yacht Club is doing right now that you want to put a shout out to, or something that we should be paying attention to other than Dig? Maybe another side project, something not Shovel Knight related, whatever it is that should be on our radar, let me hear it.
So, one thing we did hint at is that there will be Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon DLC.
Ooh.
We initially weren't planning on doing it, but we fell so in love with Pocket Dungeon that we're like, okay, we have to work on this game more. So we will be releasing some DLC. We'll talk more about it in 2022. Right now we're in the planning stage of like, what else do we want to see in the game? So yeah, there's some cool idea. I don't tweet about it, and we might see it, but who knows?
All right. Well, that's pretty cool. So you heard it here first, maybe?
Kind of first.
Kind of first. Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon DLC on its way. Dig and Pocket Dungeon are canon. Exciting developments in the world of Shovel Knight, thanks to Yacht Club Games and the wonderful Celia Schilling joining us here again on Cheesesteaks and Controllers, talking about Yacht Club and Shovel Knight. Celia, thank you so much for your time and your information. Looking forward to next year already, and everything that Yacht Club has to offer. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Finally tonight, first of all, thank you to both Murphy Vandervelde and Celia Schilling for coming on to the show today to talk about two big things happening in esports and video games in general. Looking forward to everything that they have planned for us in the near future. I'm going to shift gears here for the end of the show this evening and talk about something that's interesting that's happened. There's been a couple of interesting developments in esports in the last couple of weeks, specifically in a major tournament that just ended and a major tournament that hasn't even started yet. Well, technically, I guess it has, but the first major is coming up soon. I just want to touch on some things that have happened there and give my thoughts on them, generally speaking. So first off, in the Valorant Champions League, there was a match between the eventual champion, Team Ascend, taking on a Brazilian team. I believe it's pronounced Vivo Keyed or Vivo Keyed. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. Don't want to screw it up too much. I'm just going to say Vivo from here on out. And so there's a character named Cypher in Valorant who can place cameras on certain parts of the map to give extra, views on angles and stuff like that. Apparently, on one map, there is a specific place on the map where you can actually make the camera look outside of the boundaries of the map, giving your team an unfair advantage. And this Vivo Keyed in this match against Ascend was accused of doing that. Now, originally, they had won the match against Ascend and were going to move on to, I believe this was part of the group stage. So I think it was going to be like the final qualifier or something like that. But it turned out, ended up sending them into the elimination round, which they then lost and were sent home from the tournament. So I just want to read a little bit of the competitive ruling on Vivo Keyed from this Valorant Champions tournament. During map 3 of the match between Ascend and Vivo Keyed, Jonathan J. Howell, Gloria, from Vivo, violated Rule 7.2.6 of the Valorant Global Competition Policy by using a Cypher camera placement that is not functioning as intended and violates the design purpose of Valorant. J. Howell used the Cypher camera on 6 rounds of the match. The 6 rounds where the exploit was used will be forfeited and granted to Team Ascend, resulting in an adjusted score of Ascend 12, Vivo Keyed 9. It was 15 to 12. Is how that. I have to do that math, I guess. To account for the economic impact of the 6 forfeited rounds on the subsequent rounds in the map, Ascend will be additionally awarded 1 round. Therefore, the adjusted final score of map 3 is Ascend 13, Vivo Keyed 9. And then it gives a nice explanation as to why the camera exploit is a thing, what it's able to do, and how it's able to do it and give the other team an advantage. It also goes on to explain why the match wasn't stopped, the impact on the exploit. It gives full evidence with clips that it was actually happening through the view of Vivo Keyed, so it's kind of hard for them to deny what was happening here. And the conclusion states that the adjusted final score, as I mentioned, would be 13-9. Ascend would move on. Vivo would go down into the lower bracket, into which the lower elimination match, to which they would lose. Now, for me, as a Valorant outsider, right? So I follow Valorant pretty decently, but I would not say that it's my strongest esport. However, I can tell when something is being exploited just for, how long I've been playing video games my entire life. And it is clear, based on the placement of that camera, that there is an extra little piece of the map that disappears and allows J-Hal and his team to look through the camera and see where players are. That, to me, is an unfair competitive advantage, exploiting a part of the game and, deserving of the forfeiture of those rounds. The economic impact part, where they make it 13 and allow Ascend to move on, that is, debatable. I guess they had to make some sort of decision to get the match, so they would have to replay the match, and that's, I guess, the best way to do it. But there is no denying that this was done. You can click on any of the clips on the Valorant competitive ruling website, and you can see that part of the little map there is wide open and able to be seen by anyone. And you can tell who's walking through there. There's really no hiding it at all. So I understand where they're coming from here. Based on what is presented, based on what is seen, it makes sense. Similarly, on this 4 days ago, so on the 12th of December, earlier this month, a similar situation with a different type of exploit popped up in the Halo Championship Series, the first major of which is this weekend, the 17th to the 19th. And so here's the background on this one. Following the North American Kickoff Qualifier on December 1st and 2nd, 2021, a number of players raised allegations that Sentinels had forced the game to select a server, resulting in abnormally high ping for players in the game lobby. For those who aren't aware, ping is your connection between your computer and the server that you're using. The lower the ping, the better the connection. There's not lag, there's not stuttering, there's not anything like that. One of these accusations was directed towards Royal 2, one of the players from the Sentinels. These allegations were accompanied by reviews of Sentinels players' Twitch streams, which categorized the perceived changes and abnormalities in player pings directly in the gaming client. On December 3rd, HCS administration made the decision to immediately undertake a formal investigation to better understand the causes of what was happening, why there was a 4-hour-plus delay to the NA kickoff on day 2, and to more closely examine the denominations of these allegations. In order to do this, they did a thorough and accurate review. They included research and analysis done by multiple teams within Microsoft and provided ample time for Sentinels to present any evidence they wished to be reviewed. Essentially, they also, I'm not going to get into the whole thing on this website that's on this competitive ruling here, but they have listed dates, they've listed times, they show all the different tournaments that are affected, how only one server was the only one showing on the server ping list, the rest of them were missing, which would force all of his matches onto that server and create an abnormally high ping for players in the affected matches. The internal development team reproduced a publicly known documented tactic to proactively remove servers from the list of eligible servers, and then the data signature that came out of it matched the data signature that was found by Royal 2. They really went into the code to figure out that there was some truth, not truth to this, but some fire where there was smoke, let's say, with ISP data that provided by the people who were trying to replicate this, plus ISP data provided by Sentinels to support an alternative explanation, which was found to be inconsistent. So here's the big thing. We have determined that the only plausible explanation for Royal 2's telemetry data pattern referred to above is that there was a direct modification of files giving Royal 2 an unfair competitive advantage during play. This violates the official rules, and it gives the specific section and lists the specific section. So the penalty, and this is the big one, they now essentially have been removed from the major on Sunday. Sentinels, one of the 10 teams that HCS was touting to be a part of this, one of the 10 teams that has equipment you can buy in the store, will now no longer be a part of their first major. Nullification of Sentinels placement for the NA Open Series 11-27 and Kickoff Qualifier 12-1, which includes removal of HCS 4v4 points, 3,600 points total for all members of the Sentinels team. and forfeiture of the first place pool play position for the HCS Kickoff Major Raleigh 2021 that they earned in the kickoff qualifier. Also, Royal 2 has been suspended until January the 28th. So by the time the ruling was made, we're looking at like a 45-day ban. Sentinels will be unable to field the same full roster for the HCS Kickoff Major Raleigh as was used in the qualifier and will be ineligible for a pool play position at the Raleigh event. The rest of the roster is eligible to compete in the open bracket, and they will have until roster lock on Monday, which passed, to complete their roster. So essentially, they were able to dig deep, replicate what this person was accused of doing, show them that the data signatures matched, the telemetry patterns matched, and when Sentinels could not provide a proper counter argument, banned them essentially, well, not banned them, suspended the player, threw out a couple of fines, took away all the points they earned, and essentially removed them from this major. I actually applaud that. It's not a popular decision, which is part of what I'm getting at here. But the fact that they were willing to do that to a marquee team in their first ever major, one where one would assume a lot of eyes will be for the first time for the HCS, that is laudable, that they would step out of their box like that and do that. But the problem that has come up since then, is that all of their fans are pissed. In both instances, Vivo and Sentinels, their fans stormed Twitter saying it was unfair and it was biased and all this other stuff. And honestly, part of me wants to say it's the closest that esports have ever gotten to real sports, because I very much got a Philadelphia Eagles fans yelling at the ref for a good call sort of vibe. But at the same time, if the amount of evidence that is presented, there's no undeniable proof that these two folks did these things, shown both in live Twitter feed or live Twitch feeds of the event and in, internal dig deep telemetry patterns that they can replicate. How do we argue it? I don't feel like either of these leagues would go out of their way to punish these teams unless, A, there was an obvious exploit, which is in the case of Vivo, after a while it became obvious, or B, there was enough chatter around a supposed violation that they decided to investigate. They investigated the best way they know how, and they found something. So what is the problem here? That's what I'm not able to wrap my head around. Are you mad that they got caught? Are you mad that they're not going to be, in Vivo's case, they weren't a major factor of the tournament anymore, but in Sentinel's case, they're not going to be in the tournament at all? Like, is that what we're angry about? Then you should be angry at the player, not the league. The league was doing what they were supposed to do. They're trying to protect the competitive integrity of the game, and if they're finding things that go against that, they have to take action. Would you rather hear that this guy was manipulating servers to help his team win, and they didn't do anything? That would be worse. Them knowing and not saying anything. You would never be able to trust that league again. So the fact that they are now coming out of the gate before their first major and effectively banning one of their best, most high-profile teams from their first major before it even happens actually gives me a little confidence in the HCS. I'm not going to lie. It shows that they're able to make the hard decision in the interest of competitive integrity as opposed to, any monetary gain that may be made by the league by having them there. Especially if there's evidence to suggest that the accused did what they are accused of, as was the case with everything that they had shown here. So I'm wondering why fans are now mad at the leagues and not the players. Why are the players getting scot-free out of this? If they did the things that they were supposedly accused of doing, if the evidence comes out to suggest that both of these things happened, then how can you argue that? There is no argument. If they're guilty and the investigation proves as such, then they're guilty, and they let their teams down, and they let their fans down, and in the case of Valorant, which was an international tournament, they let their country down, and that's just the end of it. I mean, I don't understand how we can tell these players or these teams that, you're not at fault. You just did what you had to do to win and all this other stuff, when in reality they're actively going against the way the game should be played, and that to me is wrong. So based on the investigations that were posted and all the evidence that was there, I am happy that these leagues are taking these actions, particularly so deep, so deep into their tournament seasons a la Valorant, or so early as in Halo. And I hope that these tough decisions continue to keep getting made, because a game with high integrity, I think, has a better chance of surviving both, as a league and, and maybe in a more mainstream sense than a league that allows people who try to go against the rules to do so. So my kudos to Valorant's esports team. My kudos to the Halo Championship Series team. Those were not easy decisions to make, I'm sure, but they were the right ones, because accountability is key. And if these teams are doing things they shouldn't be doing, the leagues should take action. And with that, we are at the end of episode 77 of Cheesesteaks and Controllers, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, iHeart, you name it, we're there. And we are here to give you the best and brightest in gaming news and esports news. Episode 78 next week. Not sure what's going on there. We are approaching the holidays, so I'm sure I'm going to try and get episodes 78 and 79 out before Christmas and the New Year, respectively. We have to do our Game of the Year awards, the WizWit Awards, the second annual WizWit Awards coming up soon. Also want to get into a nifty little program called Fantasy Critic that I used this year, and we'll be getting into on year 2. I think it's a really cool idea, and I would like to talk about that a little bit. And so that's what's coming up in the pipeline in the next 2 weeks. Hope you keep listening. If you don't keep listening for whatever reason, or if you're late getting into 78 and 79, let me say now, have a fantastic holiday season. I hope it is healthy and safe and fun for you and your family, and that 2022 brings you everything that you ever wanted and more. But if you are coming back for episode 78 next week, then I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you have a great week right behind it, and we will talk to you again in episode 78. Goodbye.